see dead people. The anti-black agenda. Ambiguous wokeness. The war on Yasharal. Among them, the global colonizers, there is an ever-increasing cry to take back their country. But back from whom? Their cries against affirmative action, DEI, CRT, and the ambiguous wokeness that they fear are thinly veiled attacks on blackness. They intuitively understand that these terms are linked to the civil rights movement, and the civil rights movement linked to the Emancipation Proclamation and Civil War, and thus linked to black people. Yasharal.
Of Americans consider themselves very liberal, and probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, when we talk about traditional,
what does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. Woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Woke, a term adopted by post-Civil War Negro communities to warn community members that their freedom and their rights came with an asterisk attached to it. It reminded them not to be naive about the letter of the law as opposed to how it was actually practiced. That unwritten social laws and norms and mob justice often prevailed over written statutes. That innocent until proven guilty was a legal fiction that rarely applied to Negroes. That two laws were at work, that which was protecting the social order of the whites and that which was governing over the Negroes. That though written laws may change overnight, the hearts of men and women change much slower, if ever. It was within this narrow and specific context that Negroes understood and applied the term woke. A growing number of whites, and in particularly white males, see diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, as anti-white bias. They imagine themselves losing jobs and promotions to unqualified diversity hires, which includes white women among other non-white candidates. They have changed the meaning of the abbreviation DEI to stand for didn't earn it. This is a reflection of their mental and emotional state. Once the favored center of attention, but now that they feel their privileged social status is fading in favor of fairness, equality, and merit, their sense of loss has triggered feelings of jealousy and resentment. And this has manifested itself from time to time in the form of mob violence.
The South in 1964 was considered reactionary, Neanderthalic, and so forth, because we weren't mainstream on not only on the race thing, but on the economic issues and national defense and all. We were considered, ultra conservative and everything. What happens is a guy like Reagan, who campaigns in 1980 on a 1964 Goldwater platform, minus the boo-boos and obviously the Voting Rights Act, TVA, and all that bullshit. But when you look at the economics and the national defense, what had happened is that the South went from being behind the times to being the mainstream. In other words, so what you had was two things happening that totally wash away the Southern strategy, the Harry Dent type Southern strategy, and that is that whole strategy was based, although it was more sophisticated than a Bilbo or a George Wallace, it was nevertheless based on coded racism. The whole thing, busing, we want a Supreme Court judge that won't have busing. Anything you look at could be traced back to the issue in the old Southern strategy. Now, it was not done in a blatantly discriminatory way. here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician or a political scientist, or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not, is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all want to quote me on this. All right, I won't hear it. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts you, backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you get so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, you know. So any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama is getting some rather unusual support from white nationalists who say they're going to vote for him not because they've had change of heart, but rather because they see his election as the spark needed to trigger a white uprising.
Yeah, just for awareness, be advised, there's probably about 300 Proud Boys. They're marching eastbound in this 400 block of kind of Independence, actually on the mall towards the United States Capitol.
I am not allowed to say what's going to happen today because everyone's just going to have to watch for themselves. But it's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
Obama going in is going to be a wake-up call for this country. There are many people that just never thought it would happen. When it finally happens, they're going to say, wait a minute, has Watts overflowed its banks? Is New Orleans now taking over the entire country? And they're going to rise up as they've never risen up before.
He and others like former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke say Obama would be a visual aid for white Americans that they've lost control of the country.
What does today represent to you? The camera's right here. What does today represent to you?
This represents a turning point for the people of this country. We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back, and that's what we got to do.
I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. Because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. All Vice President Pence has to do is send it back to the states to recertify, and we become president, and you are the happiest people. Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us, and if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
Richard Barrett, though, says he's certain that once whites see Obama take the oath of office, they will begin a peaceful revolt that will reshape the country, and he, for one, is anxious for it.
They were peaceful people. These were great people. The crowd was unbelievable. And I mentioned the word love. The love in the air. I've never seen anything like
it. It's going to be quite a shake up, but from that shaking up is going to come a great shaking out. And I say let's shake the timbers of the nation.
Who speaks our streets? Who speaks our streets? Who speaks our streets? USA! USA! USA!
Cruiser 50, it does look like we're going to have an ad hoc march stepping off here. There's a crowd surge heading east.
We love Trump! We love Trump! We love Trump! We love Trump! We love Trump!
Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
Get back, ladies! Get back, ladies!
21 priority. We just had protesters. Peace circle, breach the line. We need backup. We're going to give wire warnings as soon as the outlet is here. We're going to give wire warnings. We're going to try to get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot.
49 hours declaring it a riot.
Cruiser 5 to 50, be advised, Capitol Police 1 advised they're trying to breach and get to the Capitol.
I copy.
Hold the line! Hold the line! Hold the line! Respect the line!
22, we're about 5 miles out. We're trying to make our way through all this.
I think a person should be elected on their capabilities and what they can do for this country.
As far as who she is going to vote for, Alfred says she's undecided but won't use race to make up her mind. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
I voted for Donald Trump for one reason only. His policies, if implemented, would slow the dispossession of whites in the United States. If you were to deport all illegal immigrants, if you were to think very hard about letting in any Muslims, all of this would slow the rate at which whites are becoming a minority. I voted for Donald Trump for one reason only. His policies, if implemented, would slow the dispossession of whites in the United States. If you were to deport all illegal immigrants, if you were to think very hard about letting in any Muslims, all of this would slow the rate at which whites are becoming a minority. I voted for Donald Trump for one reason only. His policies, if implemented, would slow the dispossession of whites in the United States. If you were to deport all illegal immigrants, if you were to think very hard about letting in any Muslims, all of this would slow the rate at which whites are becoming a minority.
In America, okay, I know they say that white people are privileged, right? But I think that there's 3 groups that are brighter than fucking white people. Okay. And I think it's an embarrassment that white people aren't like, it goes like this, okay? It goes, brown are the wealthiest income earners and asset owners in America.
Brown meaning what?
Indian.
Indian, okay.
Then it's Asian.
Okay.
I think you guys are right there, number 3.
The Jews?
Number 3 spot, because y'all get into a whole bunch of other bullshit.
There's not that many of us, though. There's way less Jews than
no, 100%. But I mean, by GDP and by population, you guys are fucking like outstanding, outliers. Great. Then it's the white people in the middle. Okay, now the black and browns are bottom 2 groups, black and brown.
Black and Hispanic, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you already said brown is Indian.
But the most embarrassing stat there is you're a fucking privileged white person in America and you're in the fucking middle. It's disgusting. You got education available to you, healthcare available to you, fucking lawyers available to you, banks available to you. You can walk in anywhere, nobody fucking, and you still couldn't fucking
So
make
you're saying
it to
all
the
these
top.
people are wasting their whiteness. That's what
Fuck
you're
yeah,
saying.
dude. Fuck yeah. Like, ain't no way another fucking race is going to beat me to the top of the food chain. And I'm white.
And you're white.
Mm-hmm.
But you made it to the top of the food chain, so.
That's what I'm saying.
You're the outlier.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, there's no way I'm being blessed with all this. And male, by the way.
And male, right. Male whites.
Yeah.
You're totally wasting.
And good looking.
Right.
And what DEI is saying, go out and look for it. You don't have to hire unqualified people. You just have to hire different people. I mean, how many movies do we have to see, right, before we realize that, hey, black women can work as engineers at NASA, or people who are completely paralyzed except for their left foot can be incredible artists, or, you know, a million other things. Women can be surgeons. Can you imagine that?
Right.
So that's kind of what I think of as DEI, right? And it's been around for 60 years. It's not new, but suddenly, I don't know, in the last 5 years, it became a shorthand for hiring unqualified black people.
Yeah.
To jobs that should go to white people. You know, so I wanted to kind of get to the bottom of that and see kind of what I thought, what other people thought. Okay, so here's a little quiz. Who do you think benefits most from DEI programs? They did a survey. The Pew Research people, they're pretty good. They did a survey about 5 months ago to get people's opinions. And if you said black people, most people agree with that. You know, a lot of people don't have opinions, which is fair. They don't know enough, and that's fair. But the one thing that got a majority of votes is black women benefit and black men benefit. Do white women benefit? A lot of people don't know. If you had asked me, I would have said, well, I'm not really sure, but probably somewhat.
Right.
And that's what most, 30% of people say yes. Almost as many say they are hurt by it, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But almost nobody thinks that white men are benefited.
Right.
Like 14%. But a lot of people think that they're hurt by it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the general opinion. All right. So that's where we stand. Fortunately, the government actually kept statistics because this has been going on for 60 years. It's not like it happened yesterday. And you can look it up, except you can't because they took all that information off the web. And
Right. Not anymore.
Yeah, you can't find it anymore. But when there were people who were looking and they did find out, it's a quiz. It's a quiz for everybody out there. Who do you think benefits the most from DEI programs? Time's up. Black people? No. White women. Overwhelmingly. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. And I'm not going to get into that now because that's a whole other discussion. But I will say that one of the reasons is that 50 years of affirmative action got a lot of women into the workplace where they were in a position to take advantage of a new push to say, hey, we need to look for qualified people. They were already in the workplace because of affirmative action. That was one of the reasons. But be that as it may. All right. So who's the second biggest beneficiary of DEI programs? Time's up. Black people?
You would think so. I mean, most people in America apparently think so.
Yeah, most people think so. No. The second biggest beneficiary of DEI programs is white men. And when I read that, I was completely shocked. I mean, aren't these the people who are complaining about DEI and saying that if it wasn't for them, these other people, that these qualified white guys would be in the workplace and they're losing their spots to DEI people? And isn't it terrible? How is it possible that white men are the second biggest beneficiaries? It just blew my mind.
Did you find out why that was?
Well, I mean, it's hard to kind of track down because I don't have access to the statistics anymore. And I would have done a much deeper dive into them. But the reality is that when you're talking about diversity, so many people think white and black.
Mm-hmm.
And that's diversity. But talent is everywhere. It's in all kinds of overlooked communities. And white men happen to belong to some of those communities. So if you look at who benefits, white women, white men, Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, disabled people, and that's not just people in wheelchairs. It's neuroatypical people, people on the spectrum, people who, are dyslexic, have the Spilkus, ADHD, followed by veterans, LGBTQ, and alphabet people like me, and at the very bottom, black people.
Mm.
White men, of course, are not a uniform group,
Right.
as much as we think so. They are vets. They are disabled. They are LGBTQ, whatever. They are poor. And in all of those categories of diverse talent benefit from DEI programs, and they're all majority white.
Right.
So of course white people are going to benefit more from DEI programs. And they're also going to be hurt the most by taking them away.
Yeah.
Just by population, white people are going to be the majority in LGBTQ and, disabled. But let's talk about poor people. Poor people are massively benefited by DEI programs. And most poor people are white.
Mm-hmm.
There are programs that universities have that outreach, for example, to people in rural counties, because those kids would never be able to get into those schools. They don't have the money. They don't have, the background in education. Their high schools can't afford advanced placement and all these kind of things that universities like. These schools have financial aid packages and they outreach to those kids and they want them in their schools. Those kids might not even realize that. And that population is overwhelmingly white. And veterans, God bless every single one of them, 8 out of 10 veterans in this country are white, and 9 out of 10 are men. And veterans are one of the hugest groups benefiting from DEI programs. I'm just going to take a couple more minutes. I'm going to tell you about a YouTube that I saw of this white woman saying, name one thing that DEI has done that's good. So I'm going to give you a couple of things. These poor kids from the, impoverished, from rural counties. All of those programs go away. Those were getting kids who were really smart and really talented and could really succeed and bringing them into the educated workforce. That all goes away. Kids who want to really do something, be leaders of tomorrow in the government. The best way to do that is to get an internship, right, with somebody in Congress. But they can't afford it. It's very expensive, and those are unpaid. Biden said, this is really important. I'm going to pay the interns so that they can be, in the government and learn all those things. And that was a DEI program. That goes away. And all kinds of things happened because of DEI that I don't think DEI required. But once you get a really qualified person that you had never looked at before into your company, you start to realize, wow, part of the reason we didn't look was because they have special needs.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a working mother. We didn't like to hire working mothers. You're not allowed to discriminate, but we kind of did because we know they have responsibilities for kids. But once we hired this woman, she was awesome. She was amazing. And the fact that she had to leave early on Thursday, and sometimes she couldn't come into the office because she had to take care of the kids. We're going to make accommodations for her. We're going to have flexible work schedules. We're going to have flexible hours for her. This disabled person is so good, but he needs a special monitor or something. We're going to buy him that. All of these benefits that came to people with, who were entering the workforce because they were so good, but they couldn't do it before because there were no accommodations being made for them. All of a sudden, the companies were doing that. That all goes away unless you are protected by some other law. That all goes away. And that's another good thing that happened because of DEI. So the last thing I want to talk about is this. There is one group who is a DEI group who gets extra points when they apply for a job, especially with the federal government. They get 10 to 15 extra points that have nothing to do with their qualifications. They have only to do with the fact that they belong to this certain group. They get a leg up on every other applicant. And who is that group? Another quiz. Black people?
If you believe the anti-DEI propaganda, all we're hearing is that these groups are giving special advantages and they're unqualified.
Yeah. And there is one group that gets special advantages that have nothing to do with qualifications. Veterans. 10 to 15 extra points when they apply to the federal government on their application just because they're veterans. If they're disabled veterans, they get more. Did you know that 620,000, almost a third of the federal workforce, which is enormous, is veterans? And the government bends over backwards with programs for them because clearly it's a difficult situation. And I think that every red-blooded American is absolutely okay with that for all that they've suffered and all that they've gone through and all that they've given up to defend the country. But isn't it so interesting that everyone quickly jumps to think that the most advantaged group are a minority, when actually the group that's advantaged, in fact, happens to be overwhelmingly white? I mean, name one benefit of DEI. If you're a MAGA, I give you J.D. Vance, who is now the vice president of these United States. J.D. Vance was helped to get into Yale Law School by DEI because Yale University had a special, and still to this maybe don't have it anymore, but had a special program of outreach to vets. They called it the Yellow Ribbon Program after Tony Orlando, which people in my generation know. If you don't know, look it up. His song about the yellow ribbon.
Yeah.
So a classmate of J.D. Vance's, who was also in the military with him and got into Yale Law School at the same time as him, is on the internet right now saying, don't forget, Mr. Vance, that you and I got into Yale Law School because of DEI, because they looked at us and they said, we need a more diverse, qualified group of vets in our law school. And we went out and we reached out to them and we helped them get in because we wanted that diversity. Most universities have outreach to vets. Now, some of the benefits that vets have are not going to go away because Trump is protecting them, some of them.
Yeah.
But the universities don't have to have outreach anymore for vets. They don't have to make special accommodations for vets. They don't have to give vets therapy like they're doing now if they need it. All of that goes away. The group that is benefited the most is also harmed the most. And what people are basically saying is J.D. Vance is a DEI guy, and he became the vice president of the United States. You want to know what good DEI programs are? All we're asking is we want the same damn thing. If we're qualified, hire us. We're not asking for handouts. We're asking for fairness. And it should bother every American that what Donald Trump is doing is firing people who are completely qualified for their jobs so he can replace them with unqualified hires whose only qualification is, do you think that the election in 2020 was stolen? Answer, no, you're not going to be hired. Answer, yes, you're hired. Are you qualified? Who cares? Do you go to high school? Who cares? Can you read? Who cares? As long as you're a bootlicking sycophant. That's all. And that's our tax dollars at work. I have to raise my hand and say I had wrong opinions about DEI. They were completely wrong. To some extent, I fault the Democrats, really, who should have stepped up and said, what are you talking about? This is all lies. How dare you?
Yeah. You could have had a Democratic Party that full-throatedly defended DEI and talked about how various groups actually benefit from it, talked about the barriers that people face in terms of fulfilling their full potential, and showed how these programs are designed to create fairness.
And they didn't. So where was I going to get the information? Who has time to go on the internet and do what I did? A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a real lesson for me. I was shocked by what I found. I kind of ashamed of myself that I didn't know. I think it really changed the way I thought about it, and it made me realize how they took a great program that helped millions of people, especially white women, enter into the workforce and was turned into a weapon so easily that targeted minorities in a completely undeserved, unfactual way. That was a really hard lesson to learn. You'd think I would know.
Well, you've done the work now, and now you know, and we're going to try and let other people know too.
Exactly.
The American mind resets every morning, and that's the perfect condition for those in power. Because if people really understood history, then they would recognize that nothing about the American system is accidental. Every aspect of it, from its racial hierarchies to its economic disparities to its unjust foreign policies, is simply the continuation of an old script, a script that has played out again and again, always leading to oppression, always leading to exploitation, always leading to war, always leading to misery. And this is why in America history isn't taught. Fiction is taught, legends are taught, myths are taught, but not history. Because real history would be dangerous. Real history would break the illusion and potentially break the cycle. So-called white people in America know a version of history. They know a story. They know a narrative that has been carefully crafted to shape how they see themselves, how they see their ancestors, how they see their nations and their place in the world, and how they see everyone else. And this ignorance, this deliberate miseducation that they have imposed upon their own people allows the same crimes to continue. What most white people in America and Europe believe about their history is not history at all. It's mythology designed to produce a specific kind of person, a person who does not feel guilty, a person who does not feel accountable, a person who does not feel responsible for ever changing anything because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're taught that their ancestors were pioneers, their ancestors were explorers and builders of civilization, that they've brought progress and democracy and enlightenment to the world. They hear about the Renaissance, they hear about the Industrial Revolution, they hear about the Age of Discovery, and so forth and so on. And not about enslavement, not about genocide, not about the theft, not about the destruction that their people are responsible for. They're not taught that their prosperity was built on unimaginable suffering. They're not taught that their systems of government, their financial empires, their very sense of national identity are all rooted in exploitation. They don't know about the crimes. They don't know the real legacy of their people. And so they don't change. They don't have to change because they don't even realize what they need to correct. You know, when we look at colonialism, for example, the history that's taught in Western schools is usually an abstraction. Colonization is framed as something that it just sort of happened a long time ago, you know, something that was maybe unfortunate, but it was inevitable, and ultimately it represented progress, and there were many beneficial things to come from it. Never mind the millions of Africans who died in the Congo Free State under King Leopold. Most white Americans have never heard of them. Never mind the Bengal famine of 1943 when millions of Indians starved to death due to British policies. They don't even know about it. The fact that the American police forces evolved from slave patrols, they don't know about that either. And they're not any more informed about the ongoing crimes, like the pillage of African resources today, the economic neocolonialism that keeps entire regions of the world impoverished, the exploitation of labor in the global south. These aren't relics of history. That's the present day reality of what your people are doing. But the story that white people are told does not include those realities, or else it packages those realities deceitfully and dishonestly. They package them dishonestly and deceitfully in the past just like they do now. The irony is that when they're confronted with the truth, many of these people will react defensively. You know, I didn't do that. That was in the past. Why should I feel guilty? But this reaction in and of itself reveals how little they're really understanding. It's not about guilt. It's about responsibility. You know, if a person inherits a stolen house, they may not have stolen it themselves, but they still live in it. And if they refuse to acknowledge where that house came from or how it came into their possession, if they insist that that house is rightfully theirs because the crime happened a long time ago, well, then they're complicit because the theft is ongoing. The crime never really stopped. So when people don't know their history, they cannot recognize when history is repeating itself and when history is actually just a continuum into the present. This is why so-called white people in America can watch their government arm and support genocide in Gaza, bomb Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and so on, and actually believe when they say it's for the purpose of security. They don't see the colonial mindset at work. That's why they can see corporations, for example, Western corporations, strip mine Africa for resources and not connect that to the centuries of plunder that came before. This is why they can hear about mass incarceration, about police brutality and systemic racism in the United States, and not understand that these are not new problems. These are just new forms of an old system. These are new manifestations of the same system. And this is why they don't resist, why they don't challenge the structures that continue to exploit and continue to oppress. Because they don't even recognize those systems as continuations of the age-old exploitation and oppression. The truth is, white people have been colonized too. Not physically, not economically, but psychologically. They've been conditioned to believe in a history that never happened. A history where they were always the heroes. A history where they were never the villains, and where their victims were villains. And as long as they live inside that fiction, well, they'll continue to perpetuate the same crimes of their past, even without realizing it. Which just means that we're not even talking about past crimes. We're talking about ongoing crimes from the past until today. Like I said, it's a continuum. If there's ever going to be any real change, if there's ever going to be any hope for justice, then so-called white people have to actually learn your history. Not the history that makes you feel proud and makes you feel good, that makes you feel comfortable, but real history, the history that makes you uncomfortable, the history that you've denied all this time. And only when white people know their real history, really know it, then maybe they can begin to take the first steps towards repairing the damage that that history caused. The damage that it caused to millions upon millions of people all around the world, including themselves. I mean, Americans, particularly so-called white Americans, you're all like the child of the BTK killer, trying to come to terms with the fact that you were raised by a monster who you always thought was a good and upright man. If Americans in general really understood their history, well, they would know that the United States government has only ever used fear as a weapon against them. And every war that America has ever been involved in was only justified by lies. And every act of domestic repression has only ever been framed as being necessary for the sake of security. They would know that the anti-immigration movements, the anti-Muslim ban and so forth, and all of their surveillance programs, it's not new. It's the same thing. It's just rebranded versions of old crimes. There's absolute continuity. And the only reason that you don't know that is because you have no actual understanding of your own history. Yes, if Americans truly understood their history, they would not be so easily manipulated. They would not be so easily controlled. They would not be so quick to repeat the wrongs of the past, or rather to continue the wrongs of the past. But that's exactly why history is hidden from them. I mean, it's trite but true. There is nothing more powerful than knowledge. There's nothing more dangerous to a corrupt system than a population that remembers. And that's why our mission must be to educate people and to awaken people and to reconnect people with the reality of their own history, the good and the bad. Because when you understand your history, then you'll understand your enemy. Because they've been doing the same thing throughout history. And when you understand your enemy, then you'll understand how to defeat them. You'll understand how to oppose them. Because you've got an enemy who keeps you in a state of amnesia and a state of fake implanted memories. You know, every time you open your eyes, your enemy is right there in front of you telling you that he's your friend. And because you don't remember anything, you believe him. You understand? The whole country is getting their drink spiked. Everyone in that country is getting roofied. And the one who spikes your drink and the one who abuses you when you're in your numb and unconscious state is the one sitting next to you in the morning when you come to, holding your hand, your protector. Oh, it's insidious.
Could I come to the Florida?
The Florida is closed.
I would do whatever you suggest.
I have no suggestions, Counselor.
We could meet someplace.
We're meeting now.
I'm not sure you understand my position.
But I do, Counselor. Actions create consequences which produce new worlds, and they're all different. Where the bodies are buried in the desert, that is a certain world. Where the bodies are simply left to be found, that is another. And all these worlds, heretofore unknown to us, they must have always been there, must they not?
I don't know.
Did you say something?
I don't know what I was saying.
Counselor, at some point, you have to acknowledge the reality of the world that you're in. There is not some other world. This is not a hiatus.
Hiatus.
¿Cómo?
I believe the word is hiatus.
Can you spell that for me, please?
H-I-A-T-U-S.
Hiatus. Thank you, Counselor.
Will you help me?
I would urge you to see the truth of the situation you're in, Counselor. That is my advice. It is not for me to tell you what you should have done or not done. The world in which you seek to undo the mistakes that you made is different from the world where the mistakes were made. You are now at the crossing, and you want to choose, but there is no choosing there. There's only accepting. The choosing was done a long time ago. Are you there, Counselor?
Yes.
I don't mean to offend you, but reflective men often find themselves at a place removed from the realities of life. In any case, we should all prepare a place where we can accommodate all the tragedies that sooner or later will come to our lives. But this is an economy few people care to practice. Do you know the words of Machado?
I know his name.
Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Lovely poet. Machado was a school teacher, and he married a young, beautiful girl, and he loved her very much, and she died. And then he became a great poet.
I'm not going to become a great poet.
Well, perhaps not, but even if you were to do so, it would not help you. Machado would have traded every word, every poem, every verse he ever wrote for one more hour with his beloved. And that is because when it comes to grief, the normal rules of exchange do not apply, because grief transcends value. A man would give entire nations to lift grief off his heart, and yet you cannot buy anything with grief, because grief is worthless.
Why are you telling me this?
Because you continue to deny the reality of the world you're in. Do you love your wife so much, so completely, that you would exchange places with her upon the wheel? And I don't mean dying, because dying is easy.
Yes! Yes, damn you!
Well, that is good to hear, Counselor.
What are you saying? Are you saying this is a possibility?
No. It's impossible.
You said I was that man at that crossing.
Yes, at the understanding that life is not going to take you back. You are the world you have created. And when you cease to exist,
this world that you have created will also cease to exist. But for those with the understanding that they're living the last days of the world, death acquires a different meaning. The extinction of all reality is a concept no resignation can encompass. And yet, in that despair, which is transcendent, you will find the ancient understanding that the philosopher's stone will always be found despised and buried in the mud. This may seem a small thing in the face of annihilation until annihilation occurs. And then all the grand designs and all the grand plans will be finally exposed and revealed for what they are. And now, Counselor, I have to go because I have to make other calls. If I have time, I think I'll take a small nap.
Tehillim, Psalms, chapter 9, verses 15 to 16. Tet, the Goyim have sunken down in the pit which they have made, in the net which they hid. Their own foot is caught. Yahuwah has made himself known. He has done right ruling. The wrong is snared in the work of his own hands. Meditation. Selah. A biblical level ass whooping is on its way.